Blink. One and two and three and blah. Boop 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 beep buzz. So I often wonder to myself, especially when I have a headache this bad, why do I listen to such loud punk rock music all the time? And then I'll take my headphones off and I'll go, oh right. I would rather have Slayer pound nails into my head than have to listen to a person. The neighbor kids are very nice, but goddamn it, they're loud. Picks of the week. Ba-da. What? 4 picks and none of them are a Marvel comic? Are you sure you're tuned into the right channel? Chances are you're not. First up, The Brother of All Men, #1. This is on the Aftershock publisher. Written by Zach Thompson, whose name I know from stuff, but I couldn't tell you what. And drawn by Eden Marin, whose name I don't recognize at all. This is Private Eye story, but it takes place in the Canadian Rockies or like Canadian wilderness in the late 1920s. So, and there's like a horror aspect, like cult mystery type thing. Sounded good. All right, moving on. This is going to go painlessly for you. Also, this week I got Hawk the Slayer #1. I don't know if this is technically out. This is, well, I'll get to that. Hawk the Slayer was a 1983 film. 82, somewhere between 82 and 84. It's not very good, but it's very much of that post Conan the Barbarian fantasy wave that featured such films as Lady Hawk and the Deathstalker series. And it's very similar to that. In fact, I think I've only seen Hawk the Slayer because it was on Riff Tracks. They did that. It stars this guy whose name I can't remember, but he played Lieutenant Touchdown in Full Metal Jacket. I think that was his character's name. He was Joker's supervisor for Stars and Stripes. I did my time in the shit, Joker, and I know where I belong. In the rear with the gear. So it's not a very good movie, but apparently Garth Ennis is a big fan, and anything that Garth Ennis is a big fan of, I am also a big fan of. Now this cost me £4.99. My boss at the old funny book store had himself a little vacation in London, England, about a month ago, I guess it was, and he and I had talked about this book probably because I'm the only one. I think that was it. Even he was like, "What is this?" And I had to explain to him what Hawk the Slayer was. And then he was in London and he was doing comic book shopping because why wouldn't you? And it's already out over there. So this is on Rebellion. I don't know what the American version is going to be or if it's going to look any different. He didn't even, I mean, he just paid cover price for him and brought him over to sell in the shop. I still am not clear why. Uh, he asked me if I wanted one. I said, no, I can wait until the one that you order for me comes in. And then when I went in to work today after having been off for the last week, this was sitting there amongst the new stuff. And I was like, oh, did this finally come out? He goes, yeah, that's yours. Take it. And I did. But it was only later that I realized that this is one of the British ones. So, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, I'm just going to get to read it before the other guy in America buys it. Probably my friend Brian. Hey, Brian. It's drawn by Henry Flint, whose name rings a bell, but I couldn't tell you from where exactly. This was my pick for the shop as well. This is Mad Balls versus Garbage Pail Kids #1, otherwise known as Jimmy's Childhood versus Jimmy's Childhood. I'm certainly not the first to have remarked, or it's not the first time I've remarked upon this, nor am I the first to remark upon this, but as I careen towards middle age, my childhood is being repackaged and sold back to me, and take my money. I'm into it. I never used to be. I used to think nostalgia was for the weak. I still hold that nostalgia is not. It's not a word I'm comfortable with. I'm not nostalgic for Garbage Pail Kids and Mad Balls. I merely still enjoy them. I haven't bought a Mad Ball, or I haven't owned a Mad Ball since I was in fourth grade. I will, like, every now and again they will come out with Garbage Pail Kids again, and I will buy. It's been probably like 10 years, but wasn't as long ago as you might think. Um, Mad Balls I enjoyed, but I was way more into Garbage Pail Kids, and we feature number one Adam Bomb here. Uh, it was 1985, and my best friend at the time, Chad Darvis, came over to the house, and we were sitting in my backyard, which was pretty spacious, and there was no one around. And Chad still felt he had to lean over to me and go, "Have you heard of Garbage?" And I said, "I beg your pardon." And he said, "Have you heard of Garbage Pail Kids?" And I went, "I haven't. I don't. What are those? I recognize all those individual words, but you." And then he showed them to me, and I immediately was like, "Oh, this is the most brilliant thing." Because I don't know if you'll recall this if you weren't a boy in the 1980s, but Cabbage Patch Kids were everywhere, and they were so cloying and cutesy and just lame, frankly. And I had a little sister on top of that, so she was gaga for them. So these Garbage Pail Kids cards, if you're unfamiliar, were making fun. Like all the Garbage Pail Kids themselves resemble the Cabbage Patch Kids, and man, they were huge. And yeah, for the next couple years, they were one of my many manias. Even as a boy, I collected a lot of stuff, and Garbage Pail Kids were one of them. Co-created by or Pulitzer Prize winner Art Spiegelman, author of Mouse and Shadow of No Towers. Also co-created Garbage Pail Kids with John Pound, who himself was an alternative cartoonist of the time. The kids next door love the show. They're going nuts for it. They love hearing about toys from before their parents were born. And there's the other thing about the 80s that I think is unique to the 1980s. That there was a lot, especially when it came to boys' toys, not to rhyme this time, but there was something about grossness that just we as children, I can't speak for girls because I think girls weren't supposed to like this sort of thing, but I'm sure they did. But yeah, grossness and you know what I mean, like green slime was all over Nickelodeon. You had little my monster or monster in my pocket and stuff like that. And you had Mad Balls, and you had Garbage Pail Kids, and they were designed to be gross, and we ate it up, and it was very punk of us. I will say, I think it was the '80s were such a clean, you know, skinny jeans decade. Um, Everybody was doing, cocaine. I couldn't get enough of that. But everything was Ronald Reagan hair dye, and it was lame. It was a real lame decade to have grown up in. At least it wasn't the '70s. That's the official tagline of the '80s. Uh, so I think that, like, there was a real culturally a real backlash. I mean, I wasn't thinking that at 8 years old, but that was what I was reacting to. That's what was resonating with me. Was I was being constantly force fed cute and sweet and white and you know everybody had good skin and nice breath, and even at 8 I was like, I don't relate to any of this. So I feel like that was a big deal, hence why I'm into this. They have had a couple Garbage Pail Kids comics over the years. Peter Bagg even did a few of them, which would have been, even if I hadn't been into Garbage Pail Kids as a boy, I would have bought those just for Peter Bagg and Evan Dorkin. I want to say. I also have a very fond memory of my grandmother because my mom would take us to lunch a lot, or we would go have lunch with my Mimi and go shopping or whatever. And I was so into my Garbage Pail Kids cards that I would show my grandmother, and I would explain to her who this was and what series it was from and everything. for years, I grew up until I was well into my teen years before I realized she didn't really like them. I just I thought that was a common interest we had, and my mother was like, "No, they're disgusting. Your grandmother was disgusted by them." But that's how much she loved me, that she would indulge me in that. And first and last woman to do so. That's not true. Apologies to all of my long-suffering ex-girlfriends who had to hear. You think that little lecture about 1980s toys was bad? Try having sex with me afterwards. And then finally, I got Rogues Gallery #1. This is by Hannah Rose May, whose name rings a bell. I think she might be a minor celebrity in some other sort of medium, or maybe this is just her first comic book thing. It's about a an actress who plays a superhero on television, and a bunch of people cosplaying as her Rogues Gallery are trying to kill her in real life. So, oh yeah, that sounds really good. And this was like, again, Warren, my boss, doesn't read a lot of new stuff, but he usually will read like one thing a week, like just so he has something to recommend. And this was the one he read, and he really liked it. We don't have the exact same taste, but you know, he's not going to recommend something that is stinky. I don't think. So, yeah, this will be nice. I wish I had this whole week off. I took last week off, so I got all caught up on my reading, but now I have to work every day the rest of this month. So I'll probably get to these four at some point. Ugh. And then this part. And then I am going to finally watch Obi-Wan and fall asleep. All right, let's see. What do we got? I'll start with this one. I really should have held off until this week because the actual #1 came out. This is kind of the pre-#1 for the event Avengers X-Men Eternals Judgment Day, Eve of Judgment. And this, I was kind of poo-pooing it a little bit last week without really intending to. It's never my intention when I talk about the funny books, but I've been a little nonplussed as far as Marvel events since War of the Realms was 2019. That was the last one I really enjoyed, and this one was starting to feel like another just obligatory, and it's going to tie into the. It's not going to tie directly into the movies, but it is going to. The hope is that people who went and saw whatever Marvel movie, like the Eternals in particular, will show up at a comic shop and want to read the further adventures of them. But what I was saying last week about how, I mean, it is tying in storylines from all three of these books, where Druig is now the Prime Eternal. Is that right? Yeah, he weaseled it away from Thanos in the pages of Eternals, and he's a real bastard. So, yeah, he's the one leading the charge to wipe the mutants off the face of the earth. The mutants, the Eternals would consider deviants, and so therefore that's their whole raison d'etre is to curb excess deviation. And so Druig is like, well, there's nothing more deviant than being a mutant and also never having to die. And then, of course, the Avengers are going to get caught in the middle. I was going to try and talk it up more than I did last week, but I have a huge headache if I haven't mentioned that, and etc. But it was good. I'll report back on the #1 issue. I also read Above Snakes #1. This was great fun. I really enjoyed this. This was really just more of a straightforward Western than I had been led to believe. I think there might be some more weirdness to it, some more of a supernatural angle. But so far, it's just a really good Western revenge story that I am all on board for. And yeah, it's just, I don't know what else to say. I wrote a big, long letter to them. So if they print it next month, I can report back to you what I said. But yeah, I really, really liked it. And I'm really looking forward to the rest of it. I mean, it'll probably just be another 5 issues. But I mean, Image does put out ongoing monthlies. But the ones that I like are all ending, like Manifest Destiny and Redneck. Is that it? I think it might be. But yeah, this was really good. Sorry. And then finally, I read Barbaric: The Harvest Blades. This was great fun. This was just what I expected. It was meant to sort of, I think, tide us over until the next uh, series. There's more Slay on the way, book 2, Axe to Grind. But yeah, full of violence, a little bit of sex, and then more violence and a lot of swearing. The first of many one shots that further explore the world of Barbaric alongside the core story. I don't know if I read that off the back cover last week, but yeah, this is so much good stuff. I mean, Michael Moreci. I was trying to think of. I think I was trying to think of this last week. He also writes the Joneses for AWA, which I'm also really enjoying. But and I've read other things that he's written here and there, but this is, I think, going to be like his thing, and I hope that there are indeed lots more to come. That's all. I'm so I don't feel good. Okay, have a nice night.